In the Netherlands, the International Court of Justice on Friday ordered the Israeli government to take all measures within its power to prevent acts of genocide in Gaza. The Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights has called the attention of the government of Ecuador to the measures that it has implemented to address the current crisis of violence. And the government of China expresses its concern by considering the North Atlantic Treaty Organization as a walking war machine for provoking and participating in several world conflicts since its creation. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos, and from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba, we begin with the news. The International Court of Justice on Friday ordered the Israeli government to take all measures within its power to prevent acts of genocide in Gaza. In this regard, the United Nations High Court, based in The Hague, issued a verdict after the government of South Africa filed a lawsuit against Israel for genocidal acts in Gaza due to the ongoing offensive that has already killed over 26,000 people. In turn, the ICJ attorney John Donahue and other judges of the Hague Tribunal ruled by 15 votes to 2 that Israel must take measures to prevent the killing of civilians in Gaza and all conditions detrimental to their livelihood that could lead to the partial destruction or prevent birth among the Gaza population. In this way, the tribunal will give Benjamin Netanyahu's government 1 month to submit a report on the measures ordered. It should be noted that a final ruling on whether Israel committed genocidal acts could take up to a year or more. In turn, the Hamas group reiterated that it will abide by any ceasefire ruling as long as Israel troops reciprocate. And in this context, the judge of the International Court of Justice, Attorney John Donahue, acknowledged that the Israeli siege in Gaza since October 7th has resulted in massive destruction of the territory, with nearly 2 million people displaced, more than 60,000 wounded, and more than 25,000 deaths.
The court notes that the military operation being conducted by Israel following the attack of 7 October 2023 has resulted in a large number of deaths and injuries, as well as massive destruction of homes, the forcible displacement of the vast majority of the population, and extensive damage to civilian infrastructure. While figures relating to the Gaza Strip cannot be independently verified, recent information indicates that 25,700 Palestinians have been killed, over 63,000 injuries have been reported, over 360 housing units have been destroyed or partially damaged, and approximately 1.7 million persons have been internally displaced.
The International Court of Justice also recognized the inhuman behavior of Benjamin Netanyahu's administration, citing that senior Israeli officials have referred to Gazans as animals.
The UNRWA Commissioner General also stated that the crisis in Gaza is, I quote, compounded by dehumanizing language, end of quote. In this regard, the court has taken note of a number of statements made by senior Israeli officials. It calls attention in particular to the following examples. On 9 October 2023, Mr. Yoav Gallant, Defense Minister of Israel, announced that he had ordered a complete siege of Gaza City, and then that there would be no electricity, no food, no fuel, and that everything was closed. On the following day, Minister Gallant stated, speaking to Israeli troops on the Gaza border, I quote, "I have released all restraints. You saw what we are fighting against. We are fighting human animals. This is the ISIS of Gaza. This is what we are fighting against. Gaza won't return to what it was before. There will be no Hamas. We will eliminate everything."
In this regard, the International Court of Justice ordered the Israeli government to take all measures within its power to prevent acts of genocide in Gaza.
For these reasons, the court indicates the following provisional measures. 1. by 15 votes to 2. The State of Israel shall, in accordance with its obligations under the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide in relation to the Palestinians in Gaza, take all measures within its power to prevent the commission of all acts within the scope of Article 2 of the Convention, in particular, A, killing members of the group, B, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, C, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, and D, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group.
Furthermore, the head of the top United Nations court says that Israel must allow humanitarian assistance for Gaza during the reading of the initial decisions in this case against Israel over genocide in Gaza.
16 votes to 1. The State of Israel shall take immediate and effective measures to ensure the provision of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance to address the adverse conditions of life faced by Palestinians in the Gaza Strip.
Meanwhile, on Friday in South Africa, locals hailed the ruling of the highest court of the United Nations ordering Israel to do everything possible to prevent any act of genocide in Gaza. The International Court of Justice in The Hague issued its verdict in a landmark case brought by Pretoria, also ordering Tel Aviv to allow humanitarian aid access to the Palestinian territory. Let us recall that South Africa accused Israel of breaching the 1948 UN Genocide Convention established in the aftermath of World War II.
Perhaps now in this space we're discussing the extent to which it can have an impact. That's something that we're curious to see, especially with what Israel is going to respond with in a month's time as the court has instructed. But I think for now it is a step in the right direction, for sure.
The judges have done the work, they've applied their mind, and it's 15 to 1, 15 to 2, 16 to 1, and it's good for our jurisprudence, and it's good for humanity, and I hope that Israel will respect the judgment and will act accordingly.
In this regard, South African Foreign Minister Naledi Pandor stated that this is a decisive victory for the international rule of law and an important milestone in the pursuit of justice for the Palestinian people, but she said that the ICJ must issue a ceasefire order.
I believe that in exercising the order, there would have to be a ceasefire. Without it, the order doesn't actually work. I would have wanted a ceasefire. No, they didn't.
Are you disappointed
but how
they didn't specify that?
I have no way that I'm going to say I'm disappointed. I hoped for it, but the fact of delivering humanitarian aid, the fact of taking measures that reduce the levels of harm against persons who have no role in what Israel is combating, for me requires a ceasefire. And I believe Israel would have to attend to how it conducts its search for the hostages and for those Hamas individuals who carried out the October 7
Meanwhile, Palestinians in the West Bank's Ramallah expressed their disappointment by the International Court of Justice ruling on Israel, saying they are unhappy.
It is unacceptable for the world to remain silent, just watching after more than 112 days without taking an immediate ceasefire decision and a decision to bring food and medicine into Gaza and evacuate the wounded.
The ruling is a green light for the occupying state to carry on with its war against Gaza, but rather a soft war. Thus, the ICJ ruling. The International Court of Justice was required to call for an immediate ceasefire.
We were very optimistic, but now we are unhappy. We feel that the court could have clearly called for a ceasefire in addition to facilitate the entry of humanitarian aid into Gaza.
For their part, Palestinian authorities announced on Friday that the Israeli occupation army has killed 26,083 people in the Gaza Strip. In this regard, the Gaza Health Authority added that out of the total number of dead, more than 18,000 are women and children, and they also confirmed 64,487 wounded. None of these records include the bodies under the rubble. The update on Tel Aviv's regime's harassment comes in context in which the International Court of Justice has already made a pronouncement on the genocide lawsuit filed by South Africa against Israel. It should be noted that Benjamin Netanyahu's government does not recognize the death toll despite the support of the Red Cross and the ICJ itself. In Australia, thousands of people took to the streets in support of the Palestinian cause in the massive protest on the day that commemorates the arrival of the British colonizers in the country. Thousands of Australians took to the streets in several cities across the country on Thursday in defense of the indigenous population on the occasion of the commemoration of Australia Day, which marks the anniversary of the arrival of the first fleet of British ships in the country. In the midst of this demonstration, there was an overwhelming support for Gaza, where they called for a ceasefire. Organizers in several capital cities highlighted the ongoing devastation in the Palestinian territories as the Israeli bombardment of Gaza enters its fourth month. Meanwhile, other expressions of solidarity also came from Oceania in the day of the International Court of Justice has already ruled on the genocide lawsuit filed by South Africa against Israel. An attack on the Khor gas field in the Suleimaniya province of Iraqi Kurdistan has forced the suspension of energy production. A drone attack on one of Iraq's largest gas fields has led to a temporary suspension of production, resulting in major power cuts across the country's northern Kurdistan region. The authorities of the semi-autonomous region informed the service subscribers that at 10:22 p.m. local time, a fire broke out in the natural gas field. For safety reasons, they ordered the evacuation of personnel and the stoppage of activity, which is why the electricity supply was interrupted. It damaged a liquid gas storage tank, but caused no injuries, according to the field's United Arab Emirates-based operator Dana Gas. Firefighters and rescue teams are currently deployed in the area. Now let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. The Office of United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights has called the attention of the government of Ecuador regarding the measures it has implemented to address the current crisis of violence. Liz Dorosocel, the spokesperson of the High Commissioner, recalled that human rights must be at the center of all policies aimed at stopping violence. It also ratifies that the measures taken by the executive branch must be proportionate and limited, always respecting the principalities of legality, necessity, proportionality, and non-discrimination. It also emphasizes that the powers assigned to the armed forces must be exceptional and subordinated to a civilian authority. In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro urged to save the Barbados Agreement in order to reach a great national consensus. The head of state led a working day with the plenary of the Federal Council of Government as part of the transformation strategies for the country, where he declared the negotiations with the opposition to be an intensive therapy. Likewise, the president referred to the fact that all the dismantled conspiracies had the objective of attacking the country. In this sense, the Venezuelan president pointed out that hopefully the negotiations can be saved and pushed through dialogue to plans. And the Bolivarian National Armed Forces of Venezuela shot down on Thursday an airplane carrying weapons and drugs. The country ratifies that it will not be the land for trafficking of illicit substances. The head of the Strategic Operational Command of the Armed Forces, Domingo Antonio Hernández Lares, explained that the aircraft coming from Mexico was detected by the raiders when it was flying over Venezuelan airspace with the transponder turned off and without a flight permit. Hernandez Lares confirmed that the plane illegally entered the state of Zulia carrying drugs and weapons. It is presumed that transnational groups coordinated this operation. The headquarters of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime in Bolivia validates the management of the plurinational authorities in the fight against drug trafficking. This Thursday was presented the validation report on the destruction of illegal drugs seized in Bolivia Management 2023. The report, based on the accompaniment of the organism to the process of destruction of illegal drugs seized and entered to the evidence room of the state, reaches 97% of recognition of the work. In the period analyzed, 48.5 tons of illegal drugs were destroyed and the processes, according to the international organization, complied with the legal standards of transparency. The Brazilian Supreme Court investigates an alleged mafia in the country's main intelligence agency for illegally spying on politicians and authorities. On Thursday, the magistrate Alexandre de Moraes, responsible for the case, authorized the federal police to search the residencies of 12 of the accused. The evidence collected so far shows that the agents illegally spied on opponents of the government of former President Jair Bolsonaro and tried to favor the son of the ultra-right-wing leader. This is stated in a communique released by the Supreme Court with the reasons that led to authorize the 21 raids on residencies and offices of members of the Brazilian intelligence agency. Judge de Moraes decided that the agents under investigation should be temporarily removed from their positions. And the president of Argentina, Javier Milei, dismissed this Thursday Guillermo Ferraro, who served for a few weeks as infrastructure minister. He is accused of leaking privileged information. According to multiple outlets, Milei's cabinet chief, Nicolás Posse, accused Ferraro of leaking sensitive information from government meetings and asked him to resign from his post. The official repeated a phrase of the head of state who referred in a cabinet meeting to the possibility of melting the governors, an expression that translates as extortive pressures against the regional governors, especially those who oppose the libertarian decrees. Far from denying or clarifying the serious references made in an executive space, the president lashed out against Ferraro. Hours before the so-called leak, the Minister of Economy, Luis Caputo, had already warned the governors that he would, quote-unquote, leave them without money. And we now have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and also share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with TeleSUR. Final short break, don't go away. Has provoked and participated in global conflicts since its creation. The minister noted that in recent years, NATO has been expanding into the Asia-Pacific region using the unfunded narrative of Chinese threat as an excuse. He pointed out that these measures are aimed at generating bloc confrontation and representing a regional security risk. The spokesman also urged NATO to stop fabricating lies and taking dangerous actions that cause chaos in the region and do something beneficial for global peace. Also, China has described the United States as a threat to the world's air and maritime security and claims that it undermines international law with its repeated abuses. China accused the United States on Thursday of abusing international law with its military maneuvers in the Western Pacific a day after a U.S. Navy destroyer sailed through the Taiwan Strait. Wu Qiang, spokesman for the Ministry of Defense, urged Washington to assess global security interests and stop its operations in sensitive areas. The statements are of particular significance as they were made in the framework of the 17th China-U.S. Defense Policy Coordination Dialogue. Qian assured that Beijing's disagreements with Washington are based on the constant harassment and provocations in the vicinity of Chinese territory. And in India, the 75th anniversary of the Republic is celebrated this Friday with a parade representing military might achieved by the nation. Led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, President Draupadi Murmu and his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron, the parade at Kartavia Path in New Delhi was attended by more than 13,000 special guests and officials. The celebrations on this date are presented with a traditional parade that combines a display on the country's military might and culture. The ceremony began with Prime Minister Narendra Modi's tribute to the country's heroes with the laying of wreath at the National War Memorial. Republic Day is a national holiday in India commemorating the adoption of the Constitution, which came into force on January 26, 1950. And in France, farmers continue protesting for better working conditions and against low wages, rising fuel prices, the impact of inflation, and European environmental standards. This Friday, at least 85 French departments are experiencing a day of tensions following the escalation of protests by farmers. For its part, the government said that Prime Minister Gabriel Attal will travel to one of the hotspots to announce a first package of support measures for farmers. The main farmers' union movement maintains that the aim of the protest is to block the highways with tractors so that the government responds to their demands. The government declared that it will respond to the farmers' concerns. However, the unions assure that they will not accept solutions below their expectations and needs. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.